So I now invite Rich Roy to come forward and light the chalice and lead us in our affirmation of covenant, which is found in your order of service.
I light this chalice with these words. Open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Open our minds to learn what is true. Open our hearts to love one another. Please join me now in the affirmation of covenant, which you will find printed in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
Unitarian Universalism belongs to the free church tradition. In matters of faith, free churches honor the mystery of conscience and regard us all as equal in our limited understanding, and all of us equally in need of each other's perspectives and support to fully understand the callings of truth and love. We all have a piece of that full understanding, and may gain greater understanding in discerning together in a community of mutual love. In matters of governance, for a church like any other organization requires governance. We organize locally by a covenant mutually made, and our free congregations, organized independently of each other, also covenant with one another to form the association. It is this process of shared discernment and covenant making that we refer to when we call our faith democratic. Understanding that common modes of democratic decision-making, like voting, rest on that deeper foundation of truth and mutual love. It is that deeper foundation we refer to when we say that love is our doctrine. In the free church tradition, freedom rests on a foundation of mutual love. Freedom is also a condition that depends upon power. Franklin Roosevelt famously spoke of the 4 freedoms. 2 of them were freedoms of, freedom of worship, freedom of speech, and 2 were freedoms from, freedom from want, freedom from fear. The difference between a freedom of and a freedom from is a difference in the application of power. A freedom of employs power for something good. A freedom of implies power for something good. A freedom from directs power against something bad. Freedom from directs power against something bad. So when we speak responsibly of freedom, we can neither ignore power nor shirk our responsibility to discern the good. In speaking of the relationship between freedom and power, Roosevelt once quoted an old English judge, whom he didn't name, but I can tell you that it was Robert Henley, who in 1762, as Lord High Chancellor of England, ruled in a case called Vernon versus Bethel. The Lord High Chancellor's job was to ensure the independence and efficient functioning of the English court system, and also to preside as judge in the Chancery Division, which handles cases having to do with property or equities. Not coincidental when the only property owners can vote that the property guy headed the courts. Vernon versus Bethel was a case about a mortgage. Vernon had borrowed money from Bethel. As security, Vernon pledged the title to a sugar plantation he owned on the island of Antigua. Then Bethel died. His executor considered Vernon's plantation title to be part of Bethel's estate. Vernon repaid the loan, but the executor wouldn't return his title to the plantation. So Vernon sued in court, and that old English judge, Lord Henley, ruled that he should get back the title to his plantation because assigning the title to Bethel was only meant as security, not as a conveyance of property. Henley decided that the executor was taking unfair advantage of Vernon's desperation at the time the loan was made. His decision is considered a landmark in English common law for the protection of debtors. And Roosevelt quoted a piece of one sentence from it. He said, "Necessitous men are not free. Necessitous men are not free." The full sentence, whose concise core FDR extracted, described more fully what Henley had in mind. He wrote, "And there's a great reason and justice in this rule. For necessitous men are not, strictly speaking, free men, but to answer a present exigency, will submit to any terms the crafty may impose upon them." He recognized differentials of power deriving from wealth and property and pointed out that such differentials of power undermine freedom. For a generation now, our public discourse has been spiced with a poisonous rhetoric about freedom that seeks to avoid questions of power, responsibility, or social justice. Its first blatant appearance, following a long stream of coded or slippery language of some 30 years' flow, was in the wake of 9/11. When then-President George W. Bush responded to the challenge of terrorism, declaring that hate cannot be overcome by hate, hate can only be overcome by freedom. Freedom is what he said. That one sentence contains the RNA of this viral rhetorical poison. And George W. Bush, who I'm pretty sure went to Sunday school, should have known better. There he would have learned, and probably did learn, that hate is overcome not by freedom, but by, thank you. That's the first error in this rhetoric. It replaces the foundational virtue, love, with its derivative, freedom, pointing us away from freedom's moral foundations, such as fairness, caring, or goodness. And a second error is like it. This rhetoric makes freedom a euphemism for power, directing our attention away from the power motives of the person exercising their freedom. You got that? And so today we have a little faction in the House of Representatives calling themselves the Freedom Caucus. Organized during the 2016 election cycle, it has about 45 members, only about 10% of the House, but it has a great deal of influence, as we have seen this week. It didn't spring from nowhere. Its roots are in the blow-it-up style of politics practiced by Newt Gingrich and Tom DeLay and their allies in the 1990s and early 2000s. But the name of this caucus is pure poison rhetoric. Its honest name would be the Power Caucus. This kind of faction is not new. Cicero wrote about partisans like these, and just to be clear, Cicero was active during the Roman Republic, so I am not thinking about the Roman Empire, and neither are you. In De Officiis, his famous advice to his son on how to live a good and moral life, he wrote, first of all, about that which renders souls truly great. He said 2 things do that: accounting only what is right as good, and having freedom from all disturbing passions, not only from desire and fear, but equally from solicitude and sensuality and anger, that there may be serenity of mind, and that freedom from care, which brings with it both evenness of temper and dignity of character. So on the one hand, what makes souls truly great is the pursuit of justice, and on the other hand, what allows souls to be truly great is a serenity of mind neither intemperate nor necessitous. But, says Cicero, there are and have been many who, in quest of the serenity of which I'm speaking, have withdrawn from public affairs, engrossed in the care of their own property. Their design is the same as that of kings, to lack nothing, to obey no one, to enjoy liberty, the essence of which is to live as one pleases. Today we call that design of kings libertarianism. And it's a short hop from being a little king on your own plot to becoming a traitor to democracy, as we saw after the last presidential election. But libertarians do have a point. Differentials of power do undermine freedom. Every specialized human endeavor has gatekeepers. In a democracy, they're usually institutions. Governments, guilds, unions, professional organizations, some group or other that sets standards. And gatekeepers do sometimes abuse their power. For example, in the stock market, legal and institutional frameworks made brokers gatekeepers to participation in the stock market. That's why they used to be able to charge the transaction fees that online trading apps have made most of them abandon now. A problem we are wrestling with today is whether and how to automate that gatekeeping function fairly. Various business models and algorithms and so on are being tried. You've encountered some of them, I'm sure, but few of them are succeeding. I think this is because fair gatekeeping, like any fair use of power, cannot be automated. It requires human judgment and bringing our best selves to the job of exercising that power. Fair use of power ought to help everyone bring their best selves to our social systems and protect society from harm from troublemakers and from the systems themselves. And that's hard work. And algorithms and bureaucracy, as we know them, do discourage us from being our best selves, we have to admit. Best for us to take responsibility rather than try to automate it away. These are matters that it's hard to think clearly about when we are under the sway of this poisonous rhetoric about freedom. The rhetoric obscures power by calling it freedom and exalts freedom over love. It is able to do that because of the power individualism has in our market-oriented culture and imaginations. Community values such as justice and fairness, caring, and the public good are subordinated to the impossible notion of the self-made man, and yes, the stereotype is still gendered male, So it was good for us to have the Barbie movie to explore that aspect of power for us. Love and right relationship are often sacrificed for power, these days under the alias of freedom. Free markets become power markets. Wealth inequality becomes something deserved. Racism, normally defined as race prejudice plus power, becomes race prejudice plus freedom, a false entitled freedom to oppress that is the very definition of white supremacy culture. I don't think that's what most Americans want. Even most of those whose thought and way of life is shaped by and attached to this poisonous rhetoric about freedom. We who believe in freedom, real freedom, that accounts for differentials of power and embraces community values, we cannot rest while this rhetoric poisons our public discourse and undermines both democracy and justice. We who belong to the free church tradition, who honor both the mystery of conscience and our need for each other's perspectives and support, who know the power of partnership, collaboration, shared discernment and covenant making in a democracy, who know that freedom rests on a foundation of mutual love. We are called by our faith and traditions to bear witness to what we know, to give voice to it in public discourse and private conversations, and bring to light the truth about freedom and power, responsibility and love. So when we go forth from this place, may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to the Spirit of life and love. Let us tell the truth. Let us tell it now. Amen.
I invite Rich back up to extinguish our chalice. Please join in saying our closing words, which are in the order of service. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings.
And may we bring love and truth to all we do.
I remind you to please join us for coffee and conversation in the Meadow Wing following the service.